In this video, I'm going to cover the topic of market timing and show you how to detect if somebody is a good market timer. So first, let's see what market timing is. So market timing is you adjust asset allocation for movements in the market. Okay, that's not a very clear definition. Let me give you the basic idea. If somebody's a market timer, they think they can time the market. That is, they think they know that the market is going to go up. So what would they do if they think the market is going to go up? They're going to put all their money in the market. They also think that they can predict like when a crash is coming. And so if they think a crash is going to come the next month, what do? They pull all their money out of the market. So if somebody says, I'm good at timing the market, that's what they mean. They think they can predict when the market's going to go up or down. And this adjusting asset allocation means if they think the market's going to go up, they put their money in the market. If they think the market's going to crash, they pull all their money out of the market. Okay? So a good market timer would shift money between stocks when they think the market is going to go up, and then when they think the market is going to go down. Now here we're not allowing them to short sell. So essentially, if the market is going to go down, what are they going to do? They're going to pull their money out and they're going to put their money in like a money market, like cash or bonds, according to their own forecast of whether they think the market is going to go up or down. All right. Now, if we think about this, and there's a connection here with options. I'm not going to focus too much on the connection with options, but let's take a look at if somebody were a perfect market timer, that is, they knew when the market was going to go up and they know when the market is going to go down, what they would actually do. So here in this plot, what I have on the x-axis is I have what the market is going to do. Okay, and then here on the y-axis, I have the rate of return of the market timer. So let's think about it. If you're a market timer, you can predict when the market is going to go up. So you predict, oh, the market is going to have a high return. If the market's going to have a high return, what are you going to do? You're going to put all your money in the market, so your return will equal the market return. Okay. On the other hand, if you're a market timer and you think, hey, the market is going to go down, I think a crash is coming, what are you going to do? You're going to pull all of your money out of the market and you're going to dump your money in what? The risk-free asset. So when the market is down, you should still be earning the risk-free rate, right? And in fact, any time that the market is going to lose to the risk-free rate would, correspond to like a money market, you're going to know that it's coming and you're going to pull your money out and you're instead going to put your money in that risk-free asset, okay? So if you are a perfect market timer, your returns as a function of what the market is doing are going to look like the following. When the market is up, you're up. And when the market is down, you are not going to be losing money because you pulled out of the market. You will still be earning that risk-free rate. Okay? So this is an idea that we're going to pick up on, that your returns should sort of have this shape if you're a good market timer. All right. A couple of other things. If you are a perfect market timer, then looking at the standard deviation of your returns is not a good measure of risk. So a lot of the measures that we just considered, things like Sharpe ratio and Trainer and information ratio, are actually not very applicable if you're a market timer. So we're going to move away from those. And the last thing here is just to argue that there's little evidence that people can actually be good market timers. And this would go along with efficient markets, right? If markets are efficient, then you're not going to be able to predict whether the market can go up or down. The book has a little example illustrating this. Let me quickly run through that. So market timing. This example is going to show that you would have incredible returns, super high returns, if you could perfectly forecast the market. Okay, and so because a lot of people don't have these huge returns, it likely means people are not very good at forecasting the market. So here's the example that shows that. And this would say, well, if I started in 1926, and if it says at every month, I could predict whether the market was going to be up that month or down. And when it was up, I would be 100% in the market. And when the market was down, or when it was losing to the risk-free rate, I would instead pull my money out and I would invest in the money market. Okay, so that would be the perfect market timer. Okay, so if you were a perfect market timer and you had done that starting in 1926, and this was already all the way to the end of 2008, $1 would have grown to how much let's see what this is. This looks like it is over $36 billion. So just in starting with a single dollar, you would have had a huge amount of money, okay? Comparing that to if you just put your money in stocks and just let it ride in stocks through the ups and downs, you would have had $1,600. And if you had just held your money in cash, put it in that risk-free asset, $1 would have turned into only $20. So you can see that if you could market time, if you could predict like when the market is going to be up, when it is down, you could make humongous returns. You could make a ton of money. Because there are not a lot of people that, you know, turn a dollar into $36 billion, then it looks like, wow, it's probably pretty hard because we don't see a lot of super wealthy people, at least from market timing out there. Okay, that said, let's move on here and let's talk about a graphical representation of market timing. So the scenario here is you go to somebody, maybe a friend of yours who trades in the market, and your friend says, hey, I'm a great market timer. I can predict when the market's going to go up, when it's going to go down, and I make a lot of money from that. How would you test that? How do you test whether they can actually do that or not? Okay, so let's take a look at that. So what you would do is you would say, hey, show me your returns over, I don't know, the last decade or something like that. And they give you those returns. And what we would do is we would go and we would create, what did we call this? The security characteristic line with their returns. Okay, what do? We take the excess return on the market. We look at the excess return on their portfolio. We've got the scatter plot. This is what we did before. We do the best fit line. That was called the security characteristic line, right? And we look at the slope of this line. The slope of this line, remember, was a measure of the beta of their portfolio and all those things. Okay, and so what would we note here? If I take their security characteristic line and I look at it and the best fit is a straight line, okay, that would indicate that you're not a very good market timer. Why is that? No market timing here. Why is that? Because when the market was up, you were in the market, you made money, but I can also see that when the market was down, you were still in the market, you didn't see it coming, and you lost money just with the market. So if a straight line is the best fit for that security characteristic line, then that indicates that there's no market timing ability, okay? On the other hand, if your friend's security characteristic line looks like the following, okay, again, I take the excess return on the market here, and then I look at the excess return on that portfolio, and if the best fit is actually not a straight line, but a curve, and that curve bows upward, now here, there is some indication of market timing. How do I see that? Why does this indicate market timing? Well, let's think about it. So the x-axis here is the market. So we're saying when the market was up, okay, this person was in the market. Okay, they were making money with the market. On the other hand, when the market was down, look at this plot. Because it's bowing this way, they didn't lose that much. Okay, how did you not lose that much when the market was down? You must have pulled some of your money out of the market, at least some of it, right? So that indicates that this person is market timing and actually is a pretty good market timer, okay? So if your security characteristic line is better fit with a curve that bows upward, then you have a case for saying, hey, look, you can actually see it in my security characteristic line. I am a decent market timer. When the market was up, I was in the market. When the market was down, I had pulled some of my money out of the market, so I didn't lose as much. Okay, so that is the key takeaway here. Looking at the security characteristic line, that bowing upward, that indicates that they could predict when the market goes up and that they were shifting their assets accordingly. Now, there's a fancy way to say this. I like just looking at it and seeing whether this best fit line bows upward. Okay, but the fancy way to say this has to do with beta. And let's remember, what was beta in these security characteristic lines? Beta was the slope, right? Beta was the slope of the curve. So the fancy way to say it is that when the market was up, this person had a high beta, meaning you had high sensitivity or high exposure to the market. What does that mean? You were just in the market. You put your money in the market. And over here, the slope is flatter. So this is low beta, okay? And low beta indicates what? When the market was down, they did not have a lot of exposure to the market. Why? Because likely they pulled their money out. So the fancy way to say it is that their beta was high when the market was up, okay, and their beta was low when the market was down. But again, I like to just look at this and see it through the curvature. Okay, so this is what we would look for to indicate if somebody claims, hey, I'm a good market timer. I'd say, okay, let's look at your security characteristic line, and is a curve that bows upward, is that the best fit? If it is, then okay, yeah, I believe you. You actually have some market timing ability. Okay, let's do a problem on this that reinforces it, and then that'll be it for this section. So evaluate the timing. So there we're talking about the market timing. And this problem is also going to ask about selection abilities. So that's going to pull us back to a concept that we saw before. So it wants us to evaluate both of those, the timing aspect and the selection abilities of the 4 managers whose performances are plotted in the following 4 scatter diagrams. And then again, these are security characteristic lines. So we look at each of these, right? And I look at A here, there is the security characteristic line. It looks like it's bowing upward. B is bowing upward. C is actually bowing downward, and D is bowing downward. Okay, so if we were to walk through each of these, right, what would we say? So if we look at A, and try to do this in your own mind as I'm going through it, is A good market time? Let's first talk about market timing. Is A good market timer or a bad market timer? What do I look for? I look to see whether this curve is bowing upward. Is it bowing upward? Yes, it is. So I would say A is good at market timing. Okay, let's look at B. B's curve also bows upward. I would say that's good at market timing. What about C? C's curve is bowing downward. That is not good. Why is that not good? Because when the market went down, it looked like C had a lot of exposure and lost a lot of money. So that would be a poor market timer, and D here also looks like a poor market timer because it bows downward. Okay, so that would be the answer in terms of market timing. Basically, you just look at the curvature of that. If it bows upward, you're good. If it bows downward, you're doing a bad job of market timing. On the other hand, this plot also asks for selection ability. Here we're talking about security selection, and now we have to remember, oh, what was sort of our measure of security selection? That was alpha. That was looking at alpha. Remember we said positive alpha corresponds to an underpriced stock, and if you're having positive alpha, it means you're good at picking those stocks. So let's try to remember in these security characteristic lines, what was our measure of alpha? Okay, now before we had straight lines, but it's going to be the same concept here. Hopefully you remember that it was the y-intercept that was the alpha. That was the historical alpha. Okay, so in this case, we look at A. Is A good at selection ability, good at picking stocks, or bad? That's a negative alpha, so that would be bad. B has what? A positive alpha, that would be good. C has a positive alpha, that would be good. And D, it looks like it's slightly negative, so that would be bad. So combining all these together, we'd be able to identify the timing and selection ability. So let me show you sort of the whole results here. So stock selection, now I have it written out. I was hiding this, but I have it written out so you can read through. It's the intercept of these diagrams, the security characteristic lines. That's a measure of stock selection ability. So that's what I told you there. So remember that. On the other hand, market timing was what? Indicated by the curvature of the plotted line. So we went through that as well. And then the summary of the results here was A. A here was what? Bad at selection ability. That was the negative alpha. Good at market timing because it bowed upward, right? B was good at both. C was what? Good at selection ability, but bad at market timing because it was curving down, and D was actually bad at both. So you want to be able to identify these things from the security characteristic line. All right, that's it.